All right, let's dive in. This time, we're exploring the Dharma Collection. And, you all wanted to know about the first 20 Dharmas. So that's what we're going to focus on today, kind of unpack them one by one, see what's in there, you know. The cool thing is this text is basically laid out like a list.
Yeah, it makes it almost like a roadmap for us. It gives us this clear path through, some really core ideas in Buddhist thought. But even though it's like a list format, each one of those dharmas is surprisingly deep.
Yeah, there's definitely more to it than meets the eye. So before we get into the specifics, can you give us a little context? Like, what exactly is the Dharma Collection, and why is it so important in the first place?
So it's basically this compilation of key Buddhist ideas and concepts, right? And it's attributed to Nagarjuna. He was this really renowned Indian Buddhist philosopher.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of him.
But, like with a lot of ancient texts, the exact date when it was compiled, that's kind of debated. But one thing that points to it being compiled, later on is it includes teachings from the Mahayana tradition.
Ah, okay, so that gives us a clue.
Exactly.
So right from the beginning, we're already seeing how Buddhist thought evolved over time. All right, well, let's jump right in then, huh? The first three dharmas are all about the three treasures, which, I think are like the foundation of Buddhism, right? I think
Yes.
most people have heard of the Buddha, but what about like the Dharma and the Sangha? Those might be new for some people.
Yeah, the Dharma, well, that's basically all the teachings and practices that lead to enlightenment. You can think of it kind of like a guidebook, for
Yeah.
for understanding like the nature of reality, the causes of suffering, and the path to liberation.
Okay, so like the map and the Sangha is like,
And then, yeah, the Sasanga is the community. It's all the practitioners. So you have the teachings, and then you have the community of people who are, putting those teachings into practice, and they provide support and guidance along the way. Like it really emphasizes that this whole journey to enlightenment, you don't have to do it alone.
right, yeah, because that could be pretty tough going it alone. It's interesting, isn't it, how these three elements, you have the teacher, the Buddha, the teachings, the Dharma, and then the community, the Sangha, like they all work together to form a complete path.
Exactly. They really reinforce and support each other. Now, the next Dharma we have on the list, that one brings in this idea of the three vehicles, which are like different approaches you can take to the path. You have the disciples vehicle, then the independent Buddha's vehicle, and then, the great vehicle, also called the Mahayana.
Yeah, and I remember you mentioned earlier the fact that the Mahayana is included. That tells us something about when the Dharma collection was put together.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, the Mahayana developed a little later in Buddhist history, so the fact that it's here suggests that, this text was probably compiled after that shift in Buddhist thought.
So it's like a little historical clue hidden in the text. Okay, now we're getting into some of the more visual aspects of Buddhism, right? The fifth Dharma is all about the Five Dhyani Buddhas. I've always been like fascinated by these figures. Can you tell us a bit more about them?
So yeah, each of these five dying Buddhas, they kind of embody different qualities, and they're also associated with specific colors and directions. Like you have Vairocana, who represents wisdom, and he's connected to the color white. And then there's Akshobhya, who represents the unchanging nature of reality, and he's associated with the color blue.
Wow, yeah, they're not just like names. They're like these like embodiments of these really profound ideas, aren't they? It's almost like a visual language to understand these like really deep teachings.
Exactly. And you often see them depicted in these really elaborate mandalas and statues, which, act as focal points for meditation and contemplation.
Okay, yeah, so it's not just decoration. They're actually tools for people to deepen their understanding.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite Dhyani Buddha? I'm just curious.
I've always found myself drawn to Amitabha. He's the one who embodies compassion, and he's connected to the Western Pure Land. Like the idea that there's a whole realm dedicated to cultivating compassion, that really resonates with me.
Ah, that's beautiful. I can see why you'd be drawn to that. Okay, so the next Dharma on our list takes us even deeper into this world of Buddhist cosmology, right? We got goddesses and protectors coming in now, which, that adds a whole new dimension to the picture.
Yeah, it does. So the Dharma collection mentions four goddesses: Rakani, Mamaka, Patura, and Tara. And just like the Dhyani Buddhas, each one is associated with specific qualities and colors. And then it also introduces five protectors. And they've got these pretty intense names like a sailor and thousands crusher.
Whoa. Those names definitely sound like, they're there to protect something. It kind of makes me wonder, though, why are protectors even needed in Buddhism? I thought enlightenment was like a peaceful state.
Right, it is. Ultimately, it is. But the path to get there, the path to enlightenment, it can be pretty challenging. There are obstacles,
Mm.
both internal and external ones. And so these protectors kind of symbolize the forces that help you, overcome those obstacles. They safeguard the Dharma and help guide you towards, that ultimate liberation.
So it's like having like spiritual allies along the way helping you out.
Exactly.
And it's not just about like external protection, right? It's
Yeah.
about protecting your mind from negative thoughts and emotions too.
Yeah, exactly. Now, one interesting thing is that some versions of the Dharma collection actually don't even include these goddesses and protectors.
Oh,
It just goes to show you, like, that's what makes studying these texts so interesting, right? There's these variations and different interpretations that you got to kind of, try and make sense of.
yeah, it's like you're putting together a giant puzzle, trying to like understand all the different layers and the nuances of, this tradition.
Yeah.
Okay, well, speaking of putting things together, the next Dharma, the seventh one, is all about the seven realized ones. So what's that all about?
So this list actually includes the historical Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, also known as Shakyamuni, and then there are 6 other Buddhas who came before him.
Oh, wow.
And what this does is it reinforces this idea that there have been multiple Buddhas appearing throughout time, and each one of them has like illuminated the path to enlightenment for all beings.
Okay, so it's not just about like one Buddha, but a whole like line of awakened beings. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it really is. And I think it also suggests that, enlightenment, it's attainable for anyone, who really dedicates himself to that path. Now, the next dharma goes back to that idea of protection with the world protector.
Okay, the world protectors. And didn't I see something in the notes about like different numbers of them?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. The Dharma collection starts with 4, then it jumps to 8, then 10, and finally ends up with 14 world protectors.
14. Wow, that's quite a range. Any idea why there's so many different numbers? Is there like a reason for that?
Well, it's possible that the list like grew over time, as new deities got added and kind of reflected how Buddhism integrated with other traditions. Like the longer list includes figures like Indra, Yama, and Brahma, who are also pretty important in Hinduism, for example.
Oh, right. So it's not like a totally closed system. It's drawing on and mixing elements from other belief systems too.
Exactly. And it really highlights how, Buddhism was able to adapt to all these different cultural contexts, while still holding on to its core teachings.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Now, some of those names, like Indra and Yama, they sound kind of familiar, but I can't quite remember who they are. Can you, like, refresh my memory on a couple of these world protectors?
Sure. So let's start with Indra. He's a major figure in both Hinduism and Buddhism. He's associated with thunder and lightning, and warfare. And in Buddhism, he's often depicted as a protector of the Dharma. He uses his power to, to help overcome any obstacles.
Okay, yeah, that's starting to ring a bell. He's like the warrior king of the gods. What about Yama? That name definitely sounds a little intimidating.
Yeah. So Yama is a bit more complex. He's often connected with death and the underworld. And in Buddhism, he's sometimes shown as this wrathful deity who like judges the dead. But he can also be seen as a symbol of impermanence, kind of like reminding you to live each day with purpose.
Wow, that's quite a shift in perspective. And Brahma, isn't that like the creator god in Hinduism?
Yeah, that's right. And in Buddhism, he's often connected with creation and cosmic order. Having these deities from different traditions, it really shows how fluid and adaptable Buddhist cosmology is.
It's like Buddhism is having this conversation with other belief systems, right? Integrating all these different perspectives into its own worldview. Okay, so we've covered like the first 8 world protectors. Who are the other 6?
Okay, so we've got Varuna, the god of water and the cosmic ocean. Then there's Agni, who's the god of fire. And then Kubera, who's the god of wealth. And then finally, you've got the 4 directional guardians, Virupaka in the west, Virukaka in the south, the Taretra in the east, and Vaishnavan in the north.
That's quite the crew. It's like this whole like pantheon of powerful beings, and they're all like contributing their own unique qualities to protecting the Dharma. But with so many names, is it important to like remember all those details? It's a lot to keep track of.
Not necessarily. I think it's more about getting the bigger picture, understanding that Buddhism evolved within this really rich and diverse cultural landscape. And it drew upon and kind of reinterpreted all these existing beliefs to create its own unique worldview.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So it's not about, like, memorizing a list of names, but more about understanding the bigger picture. So we've got these world protectors, guarding the Dharma from all sides. What's next on the list?
Well, get ready, because then the next Dharma is about the 10 wrathful ones.
10 wrathful ones, huh?
Yeah.
They sound pretty intense. Like, what makes them different from those protectors we were just talking about?
So the protectors, they're more about safeguarding the Dharma in general, right? But these wrathful ones, they specifically target like obstacles and negative forces. They embody this fierce energy that's all about clearing the path to enlightenment. And sometimes they do that through some pretty intimidating imagery.
Yeah, you mentioned some of their names before, like Yamantaka and Prashantaka.
Mm-hmm.
Those don't exactly sound peaceful. Can you, like, explain that a little more? Why these fierce figures?
It might seem a little paradoxical, but in Buddhism, even anger and ferocity, like, they can be channeled towards positive goals. So these wrathful ones, they represent that power to conquer, your inner demons, to cut through all the delusion and ignorance, like, with this unwavering determination. It's a skillful means of transformation.
So it's not about, like, embracing anger, but more about using that energy, that intensity to overcome your inner obstacles. That's a really interesting way to think about it. It kind of challenges that idea that, spirituality has to be all about peace and tranquility.
Exactly. It acknowledges that, the path to enlightenment, it's not always easy. It can be challenging, and it requires strength and resilience. Now, kind of in contrast to those wrathful ones, the next Dharma we have on the list is all about the Bodhisattvas, and they're known for their boundless compassion.
Oh, yeah, the Bodhisattvas. I love them. They're some of the most beloved figures in Buddhism, I think. And yeah, I'm really drawn to that, their dedication to helping everyone. So what about the Bodhisattvas in the Dharma collection? Which ones are listed?
So this text highlights 8 prominent ones, and each one, just like with those other figures, they embody specific qualities, aspirations. So you have Maitreya, the future Buddha. He's associated with loving kindness and, that coming era of peace. And then there's Manjusri, who represents wisdom. He's often shown with a sword, which symbolizes cutting through ignorance. And then, of course, there's Avalokiteshvara, the embodiment of compassion. He's the one, with 1,000 arms reaching out to help everyone who's suffering.
It's really cool how each bodhisattva is like a different aspect of that path to enlightenment. You know what I mean? Like, they're showing us all these different ways to cultivate our own potential for wisdom and compassion. Do you have, like, a favorite bodhisattva?
Yeah, Avalokiteshvara, he's always held a special place in my heart. That boundless compassion of his and his dedication to just, alleviating suffering. It's truly inspiring.
Yeah, I can see that. His image is so powerful with all those arms reaching out. It's like a visual representation of, how much compassion we could all have. Okay, so the next Dharma takes us in a slightly different direction. We're going to be talking about the 6 yoginis now. So who are they and what's their role in this whole Buddhist cosmology?
So the yoginis, they're female figures.
Yeah.
And they're connected with more esoteric practices, especially in Vajrayana Buddhism. They have all these potent energies and really extraordinary abilities. But unlike the bodhisattvas, who are totally benevolent, the yoginis can be a force for good or even evil. It all depends on their intentions.
Okay, it's a bit more complicated. It's like the Dharma collection is showing us the whole spectrum of possibilities, right? There's the light and the shadow. And it's up to us to decide which way to go.
Exactly. It's a good reminder that even spiritual power can be misused, and that having discernment is super important on the path to enlightenment. Okay, so shifting gears a little bit, the next Dharma is about the 7 supreme offerings. These are actions and intentions that help cultivate positive karma and deepen your connection to those 3 treasures.
Oh, that sounds more practical. Like, what are some examples of these offerings?
So in the Dharma collection, it lists things like worshiping, honoring, confessing your faults, rejoicing, requesting instruction, generating a mindset on awakening and developing that mind. If you look at that list, a lot of those have to do with intention and mental engagement, not just material offerings.
Right. So it's not just about, the outward rituals, but more about cultivating the right the right mindset. It's like that saying, it's not what you do, but why you do it. Your intention really matters.
Exactly. The quality of your actions, it all comes down to the motivation behind them. And speaking of, cultivating the right mindset, the next dharma is about the three roots of wholesomeness. These are like essential qualities for spiritual growth.
Okay, so what are these roots all about?
So the three are generating a mindset on awakening, purifying the heart, and abandoning ego clinging. These are like the core principles for cultivating a more wholesome and liberated way of being.
Okay, so generating a mindset on awakening. That one seems pretty straightforward. Like it's about setting your sights on that goal of enlightenment. But purifying the heart, what does that actually involve?
That one's all about recognizing and transforming those negative mental states like greed, hatred, delusion.
Mm.
It's about seeing how harmful they are and actively cultivating the opposite, like generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom.
So not suppressing those negative emotions, but like transforming them.
Yeah.
Okay, and then abandoning ego clinging. That sounds like a lifelong practice.
Yeah, it really is. Ego clinging is basically that mistaken belief in a separate, independent self, and that belief, it leads to suffering because it creates this sense of separation, this isolation from everyone else. It fuels attachment, aversion, and all the turmoil that comes with those.
Right. So these three roots of wholesomeness, they're like a framework for cultivating a more connected way of being, a more liberated way of being. It's like a recipe for inner peace and fulfillment.
Exactly. It lays the groundwork for all the other practices and insights that come after that. Okay, so the next dharma on our list introduces the four spiritual states. They're also called the Brahma Viharas, and these are qualities to cultivate in your relationships with yourself and with others.
Oh yeah, the Brahma Viharas. Aren't they like the four immeasurables? Friendliness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity.
You got it. Yeah, they represent a really profound shift in your emotional and relational landscape. It's about moving past like that self-centeredness and developing a heart that's open and connected to everyone.
Yeah, those are qualities that I think we could all use a little more of, especially, in the world today. It's so easy to just get caught up in your own little bubble and forget about how interconnected we all are.
Absolutely. And that's why these Brahma Viharas are so important. They're a good reminder that our well-being is tied to everyone else's. Now, the Dharma Collection, it lists them a little differently. It says friendliness, kindness, gladness, and equanimity.
Oh, is there like a reason for that difference?
Yeah.
They seem like the same concepts, basically.
Yeah, you're right. They're really closely related. Maybe the author of the Dharma Collection, maybe they chose these specific words to emphasize like certain aspects of each quality, or maybe to align it with a particular lineage of teachings.
It's interesting how these concepts are, presented in slightly different ways, even within like different Buddhist texts.
Yeah.
It's cool to see how those variations, enrich our understanding. Okay, well, the next dharma on the list, that one focuses on the six perfections, and I've heard those are really important in Mahayana Buddhism. So what's the deal with them?
So the six perfections or paramitas, those represent qualities that you want to cultivate on the path to becoming a Buddha. So there's generosity, virtue, patience, energy, meditation, and wisdom.
Wow, that's quite a list. It covers like everything, doesn't it? All aspects of spiritual development.
It really does. It's like a comprehensive roadmap for transforming yourself and ultimately benefiting everyone.
So generosity, virtue, patience. How do these perfections actually work in everyday life? Can you give me an example?
Sure. Let's take generosity, right? It's not just about like giving away material things. It's also about offering your time, your attention, your kindness to others, and doing it without expecting anything in return.
Right. So it's about having that generous spirit in all your interactions. That
Yeah.
makes it seem a lot more achievable. Okay. And the outline mentioned that the Dharma Collection actually lists 10 perfections. How are those different from the six we were just talking about?
Yeah, so it adds four more to that initial six. It adds skillful means, aspiration, strength, and knowledge. And these additions, they highlight, how important it is to use wisdom and compassion to like navigate life and effectively help others on their path to enlightenment.
So it's like taking those core qualities to the next level. It's fascinating to see how these concepts, they build on each other and create this complete path to to spiritual maturity. Okay, so what's next in the Dharma collection?
All right, so the next Dharma is about cultivating positive relationships through the four bases of sympathy. And those are generosity, kindly speech, usefulness, and similarity of purpose. It really emphasizes how important it is to connect with others in meaningful ways.
Those sound like pretty essential qualities for building any kind of strong relationship. It's a reminder that we're not alone on this path.
Okay, and the last Dharma on our list for today, the 20th one, that's about the five deep knowledges. Can you tell us about those? Yeah, so these are extraordinary abilities that you can develop through, deep meditation and spiritual practice. They give you these really profound insights into the nature of reality and how the mind works. The Dharma collection lists them as the divine eye, the divine ear, knowledge of others' minds, recollection of previous lives, and spiritual power.
Whoa, those sound like superpowers.
Yeah.
I'm guessing they're not for like personal gain or anything like that.
Oh, exactly. The point of these deep knowledges is to use them to benefit everyone, to help guide people towards liberation from suffering.
So it's like the ultimate expression of compassion in action. Well, we've covered a lot today, haven't we? All those first 20 dharmas. It's been quite a journey.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really has. It feels like we went from 0 to 60.
Mhm.
We talked about protectors, goddesses, even some wrathful deities.
Yeah.
And then we've got those compassionate bodhisattvas and even touched on, the yoginis and those more esoteric practices.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much the Dharma collection fits into those first 20 dharmas.
You know what I find really interesting is how each one kind of builds on the one before it. You know what I mean? You start to get this layered and interconnected view of Buddhist thought. Like we started with those three treasures, the foundation, and then we talked about those different approaches, those vehicles, and then we went deeper into the qualities you need to cultivate for, spiritual growth.
Yeah, there's definitely a progression there. Like we're building something brick by brick. And the fact that it's a list makes it, pretty easy to follow,
Yeah.
even with all these complex ideas.
Right. Lists, they give you that sense of order and clarity, right? And in a way, I think that reflects, the Buddhist emphasis on mental discipline, like training your mind to see things clearly.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. It's not just about like knowing a bunch of stuff. It's about cultivating wisdom and insight.
Absolutely. So thinking back on all of those first 20 dharmas, what stands out to you? What really resonated?
I think what really struck me is that emphasis on both personal transformation and interconnectedness. Like you have all these practices, purifying your heart, abandoning ego clinging, all that inner work. But then you also have those four bases of sympathy and those bodhisattvas. And they're all about how your liberation is tied to everyone else's.
Yeah, that's a really great point. It highlights that balance that's so important in Buddhism, right? Between individual practice and compassion for others.
And it's not like you have to choose one or the other, right? They both support and enhance each other.
Yeah.
The more you cultivate compassion and wisdom within yourself, the more you can share that with the world.
Exactly. And that idea of interconnectedness is even more clear when you consider, how it includes those deities from other Indian traditions like Indra, Yama, Brahma. It shows that Buddhism wasn't just this thing that developed all on its own. It was in conversation with other belief systems.
It's almost like Buddhism is saying, hey, we can learn from each other. We can find wisdom in all sorts of places. And I think that's a really powerful message, especially nowadays when it feels like there's so much division and conflict.
Oh, absolutely. It reminds us that ultimately we're all connected, no matter what we believe, no matter where we come from.
Well, I think that's a good place to wrap things up, don't you? We made it through our deep dive into those first 20 dharmas of the Dharma collection. It feels like we just scratched the surface, but it's given me a lot to chew on.
And that's the thing with, any Buddhist teachings, right? The real work, it begins when you close the book. It's about taking those concepts and really letting them sink in, seeing how they fit into your life, your relationships, your work, your understanding of everything.
Yeah, you're right. It's not just about head knowledge. It's about embodying those teachings, letting them transform you.
Exactly. And as you continue to explore the Dharma collection, I encourage you to really pay attention to how it's all phrased, how those concepts are presented. What can you learn from the order of those dharmas? How do they all connect?
That's a great question to keep in mind. It's like, going on a treasure hunt, finding those hidden gems within this ancient text. And who knows, maybe we'll uncover even more along the way.
That's what makes these teachings so amazing, right? There's always something new to learn, something new to discover. It's a lifelong journey of exploration and growth.
I love that. Well, everyone, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the Dharma collection. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep into that boundless ocean of knowledge.